Hey, good afternoon all. Here's another quick video on the mechanical structure, right? Now, since I've been posting these, a lot of people still can't seem to comprehend how easy this can be, and how easy you can make this kind of on yourself. I think all too often, as a newer trader, you come into the markets and you kind of want more data, right? You start having too many screens, you start having too many indicators, too many instruments that you check in, too many time frames, and in the long run you end up kind of confusing yourself. You might jump into an echo chamber of some sort, and in the grand scheme of things it's just too much noise, right? So what I want to do is just to simplify how easy this should be and how easy this can be, right? So as I've said in the last couple of mechanical videos, what I'm doing is I'm zooming out. Currently on a weekly time frame, right? I can see we had this large high, we dropped and we retested, right? So there's clearly a lot of selling up and around this area. Now, when we drop down, it wasn't until this point really we had obviously a massive reversal, right? Changing the structures again. So again, obvious point, right? Look how obvious this is in terms of what we've done, what we're doing, right? So the way that I'm reading this right now is we've got this kind of major downtrend, right? That's the major downtrend. We haven't broken any new highs, so this is still pretty much valid. And at the moment, we currently have a pullback, right? So if I was reading this on the weekly, I'm saying major down, small pullback, right? And it's as simple as this, okay? So with that being said, now that I know we're in the pullback stage on the weekly, I'm going to just check for two things. I'm going to look over to the left and say, well, actually, there's nothing dangling over here, right? So this can easily be, big base from the bottom, okay? So my overall bias is, like I said, weekly down, right, with a current pullback, which means from the pullback stage, I'm looking at this area, right? And I want to see what we've actually done. Now, two to the left, two to the right, that doesn't really interest me. Two to the right and here to the left, this one does, right? And it's only because I'm making this as mechanical as possible. So what I'm going to have is from this low, right, I'm literally coming all the way up here, down and back through. And this rule stays the same every single time. Right? So what I'll do is I'll stick this on now with a path. I'm going up to this one, back down to this one, finish off at this one, right? So there's my first swing. Now, what I'm then going to do is copy that technique all the way through until I see either a major high or a major low. Okay. So if I wanted to, I could mark this up as a major low. Now, what I tend to do is I'm going to use something like red because I'm going to do a traffic light system. I'm going to do 0.4. I know that's my biggest kind of area. Right? I'm going to do the same thing on the top, and I'm marking these two areas out as my weekly levels, right? These are my weekly views in terms of what we've currently done. Then what I want to do is, again, keeping this in mind, right? If I was journaling this on a piece of paper, I would literally have one big arrow down followed by a smaller arrow, right? And maybe just a note saying, W for weekly and pull back as, PB as ultimately the small arrow. I'm then going to drop down to the daily time frame. Okay. Now, at this particular point, I'm kind of doing the same thing, but the only thing that's changed at this stage is that instead of it now being a move up, right, we now have to look at the daily from this point, okay, because at this particular stage, we haven't really done anything yet where we've taken out the prior high, and we definitely haven't taken out the prior low. So again, making this mechanical as possible, right? I'm doing my calculations now. I can see, straight away there's going to be quite a few, blits in there, but I don't really need that, right? I'm trying to simplify this for you guys, right? So this is as easy as possible. So first thing that becomes obvious is this one, right? We fail to take a low here, right? We fail to make a new high. So my current range is here and here at this point, right? I'm then dropping down and I'm still seeing, well, actually, this one here, right, didn't really do anything. However, what it has done is it's now created from all the way over there a new high, right? Now, I could do this one or both, right? So if I really wanted to mark like every aspect up, what I'm going to be doing right now is I'm going to start down here, right? I'm going to take this across. I'm going to change this to 0.3. I'm going to change this to orange because this is my traffic light system, right? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put two local versions on, right? This is the local low here, but this time I'm going to make this dotted for the time being, right? And I'm going to do exactly the same thing here, right? So for me, there's an area of interest, here, here, here. There's liquidity, right? Now, as we come up to the top, what we do is pretty much as I said in the prior swing. We come down, we came back for retesting, and we obviously sunk. Okay, so again, mechanical rules. We come down, we come back, we fail to take a high, and we sink. Right now, at this particular point, I can zoom in one more time with this one very likely being my high. Right, and then I want to see what's actually going on in there. Okay, now I'm not going to mark up. I'm not going to mark up the highs at the moment because I'm going to do that on the next time frame down. Now I'm dropping into a 4-hour time frame. So as you can see, how easy is this to follow along to, right? How easy is this to understand, where we are, what we're doing? Now what I want to do, right, is although I haven't done this on the daily time frame, in the back of my mind, I'm seeing a weekly down, right, with a tiny pullback, right? Now what I want to do is I'm going to use the 4-hour to give me some clues as to what's happening. Now, clear as day, we swept the highs there and broke the lows here. So on my daily, I now have also daily downtrend, right? Now I could have done this on the other time frame. I just wanted to show you that obviously you could do this two ways, okay? Now, on that particular note, tomorrow I've actually got the final webinar before the launch of the book on the weekend. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm going to put a link up in the top right-hand corner of the screen for the webinar. The website is actually below anyway, but that one is the final webinar before the release of the book. And obviously this then is into the same kind of concepts, the same kind of tools, instruments, etc., etc. And one other thing is if you do attend the webinar, we've actually got the Mayfair 1 indicator, which basically gives you all the change of characters, breaker structures, volume profile, all the buys before your sells and the sells before your buys. So it's just a kind of a one indicator, kind of does it all, shows ultimately things like the sweeps, right? So that's enough for me in terms of plugin. Back to this, right? When I now look at the 4-hour time frame, what I'm looking for is signs again from the top, right? So the signs from the top are basically this one here, right? Now I'm just going to grab this with the magnet tool and I'm going to come across and say, well, these levels here were swept. And the reason that they were swept is that there was liquidity sitting up and above, right? We have a very strong resistance above that on the bigger time frame. Now I know that that's a weekly time frame because it's my red and it's size 4. So I've marked this out so simply, right? And as you get more used to it, you don't need to kind of use the colors. It's just, I'm showing you a very simplistic way to approach this, right? So as we move on up, we then fall down and we basically change the character on a big degree here, right? There's probably a smaller change of character inside here, but I'm not going to stress about that right now because I'm trying to simplify it, right? I'm trying to make this easy on myself. So I know that we have the weekly down, we have a pullback, to a degree, right, on a smaller time frame, right, or inside the range. So we have basically an internal pullback. The daily still pointing down. The 4-hour, looking at that, is pretty obvious pointing down, right? We haven't broken any kind of major highs. Now, the one question for me here is this level right there, right? I'm going to drag that across, right? And again, we've kind of done the inverse to what we did up there. I'm going to make this one green, and I'm going to make this a 0.2, okay? And I'm going to put this back to a solid line. Now again, I know, right, that this is my 4-hour. So I've gone red, orange, green, okay, in terms of my 3 major time frames. Now, what I want to do from there is to say, well, we've just swept the low. Okay, we haven't really made any major high. Right? We've come back and failed this level. We've got this one here, right, which meant we've basically swept. If I can connect that on there somewhere, something like this, right? We've come up and we've swept just above. We got another major one here. Right, I probably prefer this one a bit more than the lower one, right, personally, just personal preference. Now, given that we've swept this, right, my overall bias is still pretty much down. Okay, if I was to zoom in smaller time frame again, the likelihood is I'm looking to see kind of a sweep of the sweep, right? So I'd like to see potentially this back into this, right? And obviously there's a lot of liquidity sitting in and around this range. And I would say, given the bigger time frames are still biased down, I'd like to see another run on at least this, if not further down, right? Now, obviously this, this structure, this tool, this technique can be used on any instrument, any kind of platform in that sense. The only thing I would advise is don't use this on, shit coins. These things are not going to act or behave the same as, a more established type tool. Obviously, again, pinch of salt with something like an indice. You've got SPX, it's designed to move up. So the liquidity isn't always going to be as obvious or as easy as something like gold, ultimately, bigger time frame Bitcoin, and of course, all of the Forex instruments and tools. All right. So at the moment, my current bias is, well, we haven't made a new low. So we're still technically down. We've got a external range down. We've got an internal range pullback, but the smaller time frames there are actually pointing still pretty much down, right? So finally, what I'm going to do in terms of looking for any kind of entry or any kind of opportunity is I want to drop down one more time frame. I'm going to use the 15-minute. You could drop down to the 1 hour. This is going to be dependent, on whatever you prefer to trade. And what I want to do then is just check for anything that's pretty obvious, right? Now, again, going back to what I said about the Mayfair 1 indicator, right? This is, a bit of a cheat code. I've got a master pattern forming in here, right? So I would like to see some kind of expansion, right? We've obviously got the point of control down low, so I'm not expecting a major rally. I would like to see a sweep on the rally, given that we've actually come, from a low. And when I say we've come from a low, we currently have, this up here, all the way back down without making a new low. I would like to see even a suckers rally sweep, right? And then back into these areas, bigger time frames, because the bigger time frames are all down. Now, this technically is only trading a pullback move, okay? So the pullback bias, as we know with the couple of arrows that I painted, the pullback bias is technically up because everything else is pointing down, right? So again, you can kind of see, the logic behind it. You can see that over and over and over again, the same rules are going to apply over and over and over again, right? Now, obviously, if you look at where the change of character come in, there was a long opportunity if you really wanted this in there. That to me is counter trend, but yeah, it's still, still plausible. I really like a little bit of a breakout. This is only, 20, 25 pips, grand scheme of things. And then I think we get this drop coming back down, right? And I would like to attack, obviously, down lower again. So look, I think for me, just following the logic, right, there's not really that much there. You could trade a breakout from here, with a target up there potentially. Again, not really great risk reward. I think we're going to have a little bit of a slow week this week in terms of coming into, the elections overall. And therefore, just kind of keep chasing and following the liquidity, following the money, following where the entries could be, rather than taking them on a whim, right? I'm looking for the change of character. I'm looking for that as a confirmation. I'm looking for anything that gives me clues, bigger time frames. And right now, I think we pretty much range bound with a view of pullback up with a larger drop down. All right. So again, I'm just going to finish like that. Obviously, as I mentioned, we've got the last webinar tomorrow. The link obviously in the description below, and I will see you on the next stream. Thanks for watching, guys.